This is where you find a member in the circle. He wants to buy a property, but has no funds. So he goes to the circle to buy him the property. And that property is charged for the loan. So in that case, if you have a circle maybe with 2,000 members, you get 50 at least, you are done for maybe for that year. So in that case, these are some of the gaps you should look at when you enter into the practice. When I started off the practice, I did not know I would have any brief in conveyancing. But as time goes by, as we perfect this work, you also look where there are gaps, the areas where many people have not ventured, you venture, and then you get some coins. But also there are challenges with the conveyancing, because outside here, there are people, or we call them brokers, who have invaded the profession. If a member wants to buy the property, or a person wants to buy a property, the determinant person is maybe a broker. He is the one who negotiates the price. Once he comes with these clients in the office, he will tell you, you have to pay, instead of 10%, you have to pay maybe 80%. If not, the owner is not willing. So in that case, you have to see the interest of your client. Whether are you entering into this transaction? You do due diligence on the title and establish whether this title deed is secure enough for you to transact and again transfer this property to him. So you need to establish the title from the land office by doing a search to establish whether the title is genuine. You also need to establish the person selling, how the buyer made to know the seller or the vendor. From there, then you advise the client whether it is viable. And with time, when you do this kind of briefs, as my friend Ojijo has said, at a particular point, you may have a huge brief, maybe 50 million, 100 million, and when you handle that, the fees you get from there may take you some time. But this one comes in the process. You don't predict when you get that kind of case. You may or you may not get it. You may not get it. So some of the fortunes we have in the private practice is by maybe grace of God. We get those briefs, because you cannot again determine who will be your client in the next 1 or 2 years. In that time, when that time comes, perhaps you could have a refer and be able now to have the client. So the practice outside, I would say, as of now, are challenges because, of course, where a number of us are in the practice is a bit narrow. But what I tell people is that if you go outside, you may find people with the shops. In a street, you have so many shops. Each person with a shop has got these customers. So why do you feel maybe you will not make it? If others have opened their shops, you can also open your shop. You can start sourcing for your client. And also matters the strategy you employ if you want to enter into private practice. Which strategy are you employing? The challenge I see, most of the lawyers who start the practice, many of them want to start in Nairobi, nowhere else. And when you start in Nairobi, you may have 1 or 2 checks from running down. You open the office, you furnish it, you employ the secretary, and then you have a few files which you trust that after some time it will give you fees. You may finish a case well, you may have a good judgment, but you find they have appealed. And when they appeal, they get what we call a stay of execution. So, then this case, some of the cases you have invested your resources, thinking that they will give you, they will approve to you. But at the end of the day, you find none of them has brought you anything on the table. So in that case, you have to also look for the other account, maybe client account, and see what you have not accounted for to open and keep you going. So in that case, you now start growing with debts. That's now, at the end of it, you find you are running away from the practice. Also, I want to point out before I finish that where you are going to land after your graduation also shapes your future. I have seen many of my colleagues, there are those who start off like senior counsel here. She said she worked for a few years. She entered into the corporations, the corporate world. She has not told us why she has never left the corporate world to the private practice. But sometimes it's not easy. Once you are specialized, like now my senior Omo here, has got a very experience in the corporate world. I have never seen him in court representing a client, but I know he's busy somewhere. So what I will say, what I want to say is that when you start your career, especially after your admission to the bar, also matters your future. Which area are you going to handle or to practice? If it's a corporate world, it's well and good. I know Ms. Masara is here. She has been in the corporate world all along, and even asked her some briefs. If they are there, she assists. So these are some of the avenues you need to look at. Some of the jobs, of course, they can advertise, you apply, you tender, you are shortlisted, then you work there. So, as Ojijo said, learn your race and know your race, how to learn it. Over the years myself, I chose to learn my race not on a high speed, but a moderate speed. And I'm happy that it is serving me well. I have handled very few prominent cases. I was in the NYS 1 for a few days, and then I left. Yeah, I left. I left. I did not continue to the end because the directives the court gave, I could not really accept. The court said that if the case starts on Monday, it has to run all the days until Friday. And if I have other cases waiting for me, and perhaps I've been paid well, am I making profit or loss? So in that case, I made a quick judgment. I told my client, no, this one I may not go very far with you. So I took him to one of my colleagues, and I talked to the colleague that now this is my client, my long-time client. I want you to represent him henceforth, because my colleague is always in the criminal, and they did very well. So what I was saying is that the areas which you will enter will matter a lot. Number two, it's good also to make your own decision and see, you're a lawyer, yes, which area do you want to practice? Myself, from college, I had the passion to practice, and I've never deviated from there. There are other opportunities which have been open to me, but I've declined. I'm comfortable to where I am. Not for money, but I'm comfortable, I'm happy, I live well in my private practice. In my private practice, I have one young lawyer. She's 2 years old in the practice. She's catching up, and also have other staff members. I think once you reach there, you meet us, we can able to advise you maybe which area you can enter or you can try as you try to settle down. Otherwise, I'm very grateful for you. I want to encourage you from the book of First Philippians, chapter 1, verse 6. It says, he who has started good work in you will do what? Will finish it. Where you are at this juncture, God knows. God says that he knew you from the time you were in the womb. He knew you where you are now. So he started good work in you. Never be discouraged in your professional career. Never be discouraged. Never carry your client's burdens. Do your work and maintain that distance between you and your client and live a happy life. May God bless you.
Thank you so much, Senior. I can see time is fast running out and we don't want to eat into the sundowner by our Senior, Elder John Omo. So I have a few questions and I'm requesting that I start with the questions that I would like my seniors that are seated in the audience to respond to. Then the questions that I will give to the panelists will be answered together with a closing remark from the panel. Now, before I look at the written questions, do we have any questions that one would rather be asked in person? And I request you to be brief, extremely brief. Come.
So good afternoon, everyone. My question goes to Mr. Ojijo. Sir, you talked of service and value, that as an individual you're not supposed to sell value and not service. So my question is, what is the difference between value and service? Because I thought that service depends on value, that what you sell out there would, okay, the kind of service you sell out there should necessarily translate to what value someone should ascribe to you. So if you could elaborate on that, I'll appreciate.
Thank you. Ojijo, there was another two questions for you. So you will answer that together with what was the fate of the two Nigerians and Ghanaians, and have you ever been torn between morality and money? So I'll reserve your questions for when you're doing your closing remarks. I've not locked out anyone, have I? Yes.
Thank you so much. Again to Ojijo. You said that you never liked working under somebody. And I believe right now there are people working under you. Of course, you gave us some reasons as to why you don't like working under people. So what will you tell somebody who believes that there is no any other hope away from being employed? The guy is busy writing cover letters, attaching CVs and all that, and are looking for jobs. So what will you tell such a person? And finally, what are you doing to those people working under you so that they also don't feel like, I don't want to work under somebody? Thank you so much.
You gave a lot of hope to these young people. You're in trouble. There's so much for you and the expectations that you have to manage. I'll take one final question. Ojijo, unfortunately, you might have to answer all these questions before you forget them. Have you noted them? Okay. I'll take that question. Ladies, mko poa? Iyo presentation ilikuwa spot on, si ndio?
Praise the Lord. My question to our enlightened educators, aside from the things that you said about attending class and finishing assignment, what are some of the things or courses or skills that can enhance our skills for the job market and even boost our CVs while they're still in school?
Okay. That's your question? Okay. So I guess why I'm insisting on ladies, it has nothing to do with the story of affirmative action. It's because I noted with positive concern that more than ever, majority of the advocates being admitted are ladies. My students in class, a majority of you are ladies. Your classmates in the classrooms that you're sitting are ladies. And I'm grateful and really happy that the ladies were more than satisfied with the presentation. They in fact have no question. Maybe the ones that have been written here were done by ladies who chose to, yes, there's a fair lady at the back. Please, thank you. Asante sana, tunashukuru. Angalau there's a face to us.
So my question goes to Becky, because I am also interested in practicing criminal matters. And so my judicial attachment, I did it in Milimani, and I was attached to a criminal court. And my prosecutor would tell me that, you know, it's hard because of the nature of cases that he's handling. So at times he has to take different routes to his home and whatnot. So I want to ask, especially for you as a lady, how do you get balance between family, your job, church, and all that, and your safety, of course? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a very important question. So now, if I keep poking you some more, you will definitely have questions. Yes? Yes, the final one. Yes.
My name is Daniel Wambua Moisio. My question is to any of them, and it has to do with faith. So to what extent does practicing law compromise your faith, more so if you are an Adventist? Because honestly speaking, we are students and it has already started compromising our faith. Let's be honest. Yeah. So to what extent does it compromise? Because I know it will to some point in our lives. And how can we harmonize the two? What you learn in church, what you practice, because you know the Bible says one thing, but again we have reality in life and what comes our way. More so if you are working with such offices like the ODPP, maybe you are working with the DCI, you're working with the AG, and of course we know what happens. So how do you harmonize the two, and to what extent does it compromise?
I'll allow Senior to respond to that. So let me read a question that was here. The group that came to you primarily is Public Affairs and Religious Liberty, PAL. But this was all because of Public Campus Ministries. They're the ones who invited us here. That's why I keep insisting that Elder Onyango Teddy is our host. Now, there are questions here that peg upon religious liberty, and I'll direct these questions specifically to my seniors who are seated in the audience. Senior Counsel Patricia Nyaundi, what is religious liberty? It's written, it's a question, it's not mine.
Thank you very much. I hope you don't mind if I don't stand. Okay, yeah, my understanding of religious liberty is that recognition that all individuals have the inherent right to practice their religion as they understand it, and without, I wanted to say any limitations, but I'll remove any and say without reasonable limitations to that right.
I hope the person that asked the question is satisfied. Yes. Senior John Omo, there's a question for you, and it had to do with, is religious liberty the same as liberty of conscience?
Thank you very much. I would say to an extent, religious liberty essentially is the recognition of the fact that we are a being that exercises, that have certain free, and so the choice of faith and the choice of conscience are one and the same thing. But faith, I think, is a lot broader. Concerns could be concerns in the wrong thing, but faith constrains you, in my view, to know that as a Christian, made in the image of God, these are my boundaries. I don't know whether that helps the person who asked the question. So I would say conscience is subsumed in faith, in religious liberty.
I hope that also responds to that. Teddy, my host, come forth. There's a question that I want you now to assist us to anchor the two questions that I've asked my seniors. The mic's cable may not get to you. So is religious liberty or liberty of conscience in Adventism? From the simplest way I can summarize what Elder John Omoa said, conscience is more of a freedom of choice, right? I got it right, freedom of choice. From liberty of conscience, it's maybe like freedom of choice. And then religious liberty is the freedom to practice that which you believe in according to Pat. Do we have, Senior Counsel Patricia, do we have that in our faith, in Adventism? The two of them, religious liberty and conscience.
Yeah, this is a question that had manifested itself, I believe, very recently in the Baraton case, where I think there is a blogger or somebody was concerned and was raising the issue that in our university, we also force non-Adventists to attend class or service on our Sabbath services and so on and so forth. I didn't have the time to follow how that conversation, I knew it raged, and Baraton must have issued a press release trying to explain the position. I may not be in a position to give the official church position, but what I think as a religious liberty enthusiast is that there is, because religious liberty is all about accommodation and a disposition that marvels in diversity and inclusion. So I think to the extent that the church, even in its institutions, can work out accommodation of various manifestations of peaceable faith practices, I think that would be a thumbs up. That may not only, we can also use and flip on the other side and say, look here, even in our institutions, to the extent that it is, you know, there are peaceable religions within our institutions, this is the accommodation that we give to them. I know the only concern is because some of these institutions are also set up as a way of propagating the faith. So when you come in, as in an Adventist institution, you're essentially saying, I'm open to be exposed to this faith. With that broad understanding, I don't think it would be hurtful if we made reasonable accommodation for people who hold other faiths and really are still interested in exercising or manifesting their religious beliefs. That's my own conviction. As to whether the church embraces it or not, I'm not too sure about, but is what, in my view, would be most appealing. Do Adventist institutions provide religious liberty or liberty of conscience for non-Adventist students who want to practice their faith? That is not necessarily the Adventist faith. I think I've just alluded to, I've touched on it in some aspects. So it would be most unfortunate for our institutions if we are unable, and I think probably part of the problem is because there's not been robust engagement in terms of advising church institutions on how we can strike this balance and be more progressive